Welcome back to Catholic Plus, where we are finding faith in fun. Join me as we mine entertainment for the treasures of our faith to serve you and the new evangelization. Today, we're exploring the Book of Boba Fett Season 1, Episode 6. If you like Catholicism and Star Wars, click that like button. And if you'd like to see more from Catholic Plus about Star Wars, Marvel, and more, click the subscribe button and tap the bell icon. We begin Episode 6 out in the desert of Tatooine during a spice trade deal among Pikes. And just as a reminder, spice in the Star Wars universe is the equivalent of drugs. Into the situation walks our gunslinger, Cad Bane. As the Marshal of the Mos Pelgo territories, which gets renamed to Freetown, he gives the Pikes a legitimate opportunity to leave without any consequences. However, the Pikes opt for a gunfight, which they summarily lose, but Cad Bane leaves one of them alive to warn their masters that spice is not welcome to be moved through this territory. However, Marshal Vance has him leave the spice behind, which is worth more than Vance's entire town of Freetown. Yet, with no attachment to something so evil, and proving himself a respectable man of principles, Vance simply dumps the spice out and lets it blow away in the Tatooine wind. Cad Bane already has a lot in common with Boba Fett, as they both wish to be virtuous leaders and are willing to put their own lives on the line for the good of those whom they serve. This is another great example of virtue. Like Fett and a virtuous Christian, Vance is a man of fortitude and principle, seeking the common good no matter the cost to himself. Next, our attention turns to Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, who is on his way to seek out Grogu. Mando arrives on this beautiful planet, where he finds R2-D2 keeping Luke's location a secret. Mando stumbles upon the construction of Luke's Jedi Academy, where we later see Luke and Ben Solo, where they had their confrontation that showed up in The Last Jedi of the sequel trilogy. As a fanboy, this was just so much fun to see. Almost like the building of a secluded monastery in the midst of the medieval church. Out in this peaceful wilderness, Luke kind of reminds me of St. Francis of Assisi, who renounces the world and sets to work rebuilding the Church of God that has fallen into ruin. As Luke is building a new academy, St. Francis built a new order around poverty and his new rule. Mando gets caught in a tough spot when R2-D2 shuts down, and he has to exercise the virtue of patience by just sitting down and waiting. As we travel through the bamboo forest and catch up with Luke Skywalker and Grogu, the sense of a rural monastic life becomes even more clear. Here we have Luke and Grogu meditating, and Grogu gets distracted by this Cyclops frog, even to the point of attempting to lift it with the Force and then eat it. Sensing the disturbance, Luke is less than impressed and gently scolds Grogu. Luke is super patient with this little guy, which is totally easier to do with just one kid. But when you have several that you're taking care of and the adults are outnumbered, it can be a totally different story, if you know what I mean. Playfully, Luke lifts several frogs from the nearby pond in a gesture that amazes Grogu, and maybe as an encouraging sign for Grogu to consider how valuable his training may be and what he could do someday. I imagine this being like an experienced priest taking an impulsive seminarian into a hospital and administering last rites to a dying person while demonstrating the value and importance of the priestly vocation. Luke begins to tell Grogu about Master Yoda and quotes Yoda saying, "Size matters not." That's how he talked, Luke says, in riddles. Much like our Lord Jesus Christ, who would teach his apostles in riddles and then explain to them what he really meant by the riddles that other people were not able to understand. Luke asks Grogu if he remembers being back home. When the answer is no, Luke offers to help him remember, and Luke then uses the Force to unlock Grogu's memories. We get a glimpse of Order 66 from the infant Grogu at the Jedi Temple during Operation Nightfall, while the 501st Legion, also known as Vader's Fist, assists in the slaughter of the Jedi at the Temple on Coruscant. I suppose there are several connections here. The clones turning against the Jedi remind me a lot of Judas turning on Jesus Christ and the other apostles in an incredible act of betrayal. Of course, the clones have the benefit of not being culpable or responsible due to the inhibitor chip implanted in their brains. Or you could see this as a betrayal of the church by reformers such as Martin Luther and John Calvin, who were both Catholic. Martin Luther was even a priest and ended up leading so many people away from the church founded by Jesus Christ. During dark times like these and terrible memories, I think it is worthwhile to remember that Jesus Christ was like us in all things except sin, and he experienced incredible pain as well, including being betrayed by those closest to him. But how, I wonder, did Grogu survive? Was he captured and tortured by Darth Sidious? Hopefully someday we will find out. When Grogu finally comes to, the patient teacher Luke promises Grogu that he will teach him how to protect himself against the dangers of the galaxy. Similarly, within our church, we can be taught how to be protected against the forces of evil. Back to Mando. He is visited by none other than my second favorite Star Wars character of all time, Ahsoka Tano. Mando expresses his desire to see Grogu, which of course creates tension because it creates this conflicting attachment to Grogu. Ahsoka offers Mando a glimpse of Grogu at a distance and does not prevent him from going to see him, but she does gently influence him by asking Mando to consider his motives and whether or not his desire to see Grogu is really in Grogu's best interests. In a way, she's teaching Mando to think more like a parent who may want to give their child everything in the world, but must realize that doing so is not in the best interest of their child because it could spoil them, or more likely will spoil them. Din Djarin pulls out the gift he brought for Grogu, not so much so that Grogu could remember Mando, but as Grogu's right as a Mandalorian foundling. Thereafter, Ahsoka questions whether Grogu is still a Mandalorian foundling, or rather now a Jedi Padawan. Regardless, Mando wants Grogu to have the Beskar armor for better protection. Ahsoka offers to deliver it for Mando. Then, Ahsoka shares that Grogu misses Mando considerably, which is a significant challenge to Grogu's growth and development as a Jedi. Mando, in order to truly love Grogu, has to make an intensely difficult self-sacrifice and allow Grogu the space he needs to pursue his vocation. In a way, you can say this is a lot like parents who need to release their reins on their children and allow their children to go. Or, on another level, while talking to vocation directors throughout my own discernment process, as well as the discernment process of my father as he discerned becoming a brother with Glen Mary Home Missioners, and even my brother's discernment to become a diocesan priest, I've always been disappointed to hear stories from vocation directors of parents who resist their child's vocation out of their own desires. This seems to resemble strongly the conflict at work here in Mando's heart, and it is certainly understandable that parents may have a different vision for their child's life or want grandchildren, which has also been true for many saints throughout the church's history whose parents did not want them to pursue a religious vocation but rather to carry on the family business like St. Francis of Assisi or put their brain to other use within the world like St. Thomas Aquinas. Here, Mando does an incredibly selfless thing by giving the armor to Ahsoka to give to Grogu instead. Luke resumes training with a simple jumping exercise, starting with Grogu's natural ability and then enhanced by Force power. With Grogu on his back, Luke runs and demonstrates to Grogu how to move and jump using the Force, just like Luke did on Dagobah with Master Yoda strapped to his back. Luke, with his baby carrier on, teaches Grogu how to feel the balance in the Force as they enjoy a scenic vista. Luke says, "Through the Force, you will find balance as well." Just like us, through the grace of God and the guidance of the church, we can find balance too. Not a balance between good and evil, but the balance in living with the light only, the balance of living with virtue. That is the balance that allows us to avoid evil and fulfill our vocation to holiness, as well as completely change the world around us. Continuing to inspire his Padawan and live out his vocation, Luke ignites his lightsaber and goes through a series of forms, perhaps like a priest celebrating Mass with his seminarian apprentice. If we haven't had enough fan service already, Luke gets out a training remote to test Grogu's reflexes, but Grogu plays with it like a ball. Not the most pleasant ball, of course, because it flies and shoots. After Grogu is shot at and knocked to the ground, Luke says, "Get back up. Always get back up. Now that is an incredible phrase on so many levels. Not only in the spiritual realm, where every time we sin, the most important thing to do is get back up, but also in life, in business, love, our careers, no matter the field, persistence is commendable. Grogu learns from his previous failure, and this time he uses the Force to jump and escape the training remote's blast. It's almost like an awakening of his previous Jedi training. Next, we see Grogu leaping over rocks and even doing flips to avoid being shot by the training remote. Grogu even gets to the point that he pulls the training remote close to himself using the Force and then destroys it. Meanwhile, Ahsoka presents the gift from Mando to Luke, and Luke says, "Sometimes I wonder if Grogu's heart is in the training." Luke also has the heart of a parent who may want to teach his child something like a sport or gymnastics or how to play piano. But if the child is not fully invested, there will be problems in the training. Luke asks Ahsoka, "What should I do with him?" Like the coach of a coach or like a grandparent, Ahsoka says, "Trust your instincts." She's almost like a grandmother who encourages and inspires her child as they raise the grandchildren. She's present, supportive, but not overbearing. That's how God works with us too, guiding, supporting, but not dominating. Mando returns to Tatooine to help Boba Fett, and they evaluate the strategic situation at hand. Seeing the lack of numbers at Boba Fett's disposal with the ensuing battle, Din Djarin goes to find Cobb Vanth for help. Vanth does not want to risk war on his people, as they are stable right now, but Mando correctly recognizes that they're part of the same planet, and he says, "We need good people to stand up, or the spice is bound to come through these parts." Similarly for us, all the devil needs in order to work is for good people to do nothing. When it doesn't look like they're going to help, Mando challenges Vanth and says, "I didn't think you were one to back down from bullies." Vanth says, even though things are tough for these people, he'll see what he can do. As soon as Mando leaves, a menacing figure appears on the horizon. Now, I've been looking forward to this for years, and Dave Filoni really got it right. This is like the devil coming to town, and Marshal Vanth steps into a position like a good priest or shepherd, protecting his people or flock as they seek shelter inside. And here we have quite possibly the greatest bounty hunter in the galaxy, Cad Bane. The young deputy disobeys orders to go inside as Cad Bane draws near. Now, if you're ever working with an exorcist and he tells you to do something, you do it. But this young deputy shoots off his mouth at Bane. Prudence is an important virtue that this young deputy has not yet mastered. We have an older Cad Bane here, but he is no one to be trifled with at any age. We must be cautious with fire, temptation, and evil, no matter how it presents itself, even if it appears like an old man. Cad Bane says Boba Fett is a cold-blooded killer who worked with the Empire, which is true to a degree, but Boba Fett has clearly grown in virtue in this series over the last several years. So this is also a lot like the devil, who will use truths but twist them to his own useful purposes. With incredible fortitude, Marshal Vanth stands his ground and tells the intimidating Cad Bane to go back to the Pikes and tell them to keep their spice out of his territory. This planet has seen enough violence. This displeases Bane as the guns come out to play, like the exorcist reaching for his sacramentals and the Rite of Exorcism book. The jumpy deputy makes a hasty move, and he pays for it. The formidable Cad Bane levels both lawmen. Although we catch in this clip something that I did not see when I first watched the episode, Cobb Vanth only gets hit on the shoulder, which is uncharacteristic of Cad Bane, who then turns on the deputy and hits him squarely with multiple shots. The Pikes show up at the club with a suspicious canister that levels the establishment, and the heat is on for the final episode. Back at Luke's newly built academy, like God who respects our freedom, Luke offers Grogu a free choice in his future path. On the one hand, Grogu can choose the Beskar armor that really looks a lot like Frodo's Mithril to me, and he can return to Mando, or he can stay with Luke, accept Yoda's lightsaber, and continue to study the ways of the Jedi. The options before Grogu are both good, which makes the choice incredibly difficult. What disappoints me about this is that there is no mention of discernment and consulting the will of the Force, like in reality for us, consulting the will of God. For example, when David was at his best in the Old Testament, he always consulted God for how to proceed. Similarly, we also need to ask God what he wants of us, because only he knows what will bring us true happiness and fulfillment. But what do you think? And did I miss anything? Comment below so that we can share more spiritual insights together. If you're proud to be Catholic and a fan of Star Wars, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the share button below to help evangelize with us. Special thanks to all the Catholic Plus patrons who make Catholic Plus possible. To see the special gifts you can receive by supporting Catholic Plus, check out our Patreon page in the link in the description below. I'll see you again in the next episode, and remember, the Lord will be with you always.